Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at preserved flowers. They promise this sort of lasting beauty, but for B2B buyers like you, Annie Zhang.
Well, the reality can sometimes be tricky, right? Faded colors, brittle petals. You've got 2 decades in the floral industry. You've seen the markets in the US and Europe. You've talked to customers everywhere, and you know the Chinese supply chain inside out. So you get the real value of quality that lasts.
Our mission today, let's uncover the how and the why behind that promise versus the sometimes disappointing reality.
Mm,
We want to reveal the factors that really make sure your investment holds up, looks beautiful, and most importantly, keeps your customers happy and trusting your brand.
that's absolutely right. For a B2B buyer, the core question isn't just, do they look nice? It's much deeper. How long do preserved flowers actually last? And maybe more critically, what really determines if your investment keeps its value and keeps your customers' trust? Because, we're talking return rates here, customer confidence, how people see your brand in the market. It's serious business.
Okay, let's dive right into that promise versus reality then. The lifespan. We know they aren't fresh, but they're not exactly eternal either, are they? So, what's a realistic expectation for someone buying these for their business?
Well, when we talk typical lifespan, if they're cared for properly, most preserved flowers should look good for about 1 to 3 years. That's pretty much the accepted industry standard.
Yeah.
You see that in the US and Europe. It's what people generally expect. Anything beyond that, well, that's a bit different.
A different league, you say. So, what does that mean for those maybe higher end products? Can they really push past 3 years significantly?
They definitely can. And this is where it gets interesting. The higher quality ones, often the ones using glycerin-based preservation or maybe advanced freeze-drying techniques, yeah, they can extend that lifespan, maybe up to 4, sometimes even 5 years. Now, you might hear people claiming 6 or 7 years. Honestly, that's pretty rare.
Yeah.
And it really only happens under perfect, almost museum-like storage conditions. It's not something you should really bank on for your standard business guarantees.
Right. And this feels like where the rubber meets the road for buyers like you. Is there a point, a time frame where you just have to say, okay, this product is definitely substandard, like a hard line?
Oh, absolutely there is. A really crucial red flag for you to watch out for is this. If you start seeing noticeable fading, or the petals getting obviously deteriorated, within just 6 months of purchase, that's generally considered substandard.
6 months. And if you've bought, say, 2,000 boxes for a big event like Mother's Day, finding that out 6 months later could be, well, devastating.
Exactly. Imagine that scenario. A huge bulk order. Then a few months down the line, you're getting widespread complaints. Colors have faded badly, petals are brittle and breaking. That's not just a minor product issue. That's a direct hit to your customer relationships, your reorder rates, everything.
So why does this happen? I mean, they're preserved. You'd think that makes them kind of immune to breaking down?
Yeah, that's a really common thought, but it's a bit of a misconception. Even with the best treatments, these are still real organic materials at their core, and their longevity is constantly up against a few key environmental factors. First up, probably the biggest one, is UV exposure, sunlight. Even preserved flowers contain those natural pigments, anthocyanins, carotenoids, the things giving them those vibrant reds, yellows, purples. UV light literally breaks those compounds down. So fading happens. For you, that means a flower that looks amazing initially can lose that wow factor pretty quickly if it's sitting in the sun.
Okay, UV light is a big one. What else? What about just the air around them?
That's another huge factor.
Okay.
Humidity and temperature are absolutely critical. Too much humidity, you risk mold, or it can speed up fading. Air that's extremely dry, on the other hand, can make the petals really brittle and fragile. Then there's simple air quality. Things like dust, cigarette smoke, even some industrial fumes can actually accelerate discoloration and decay. And, maybe surprisingly, just touch and friction. The oils from our hands when we touch them, or just frequent handling, can degrade the petals over time and transfer dirt. And finally, something really crucial when you're sourcing, the dye stability itself. If the manufacturer used poor quality colorants in the preservation process, well, those dyes will just fade much faster, especially with light and air exposure.
That makes a lot of sense. And it really brings us back to how these flowers are actually made, doesn't it? The specific preservation method used must directly influence how long they last and how good they look. It's clearly not all the same process.
Absolutely not. You're spot on. The manufacturing method is fundamental. There are a few common approaches you'll see. One is alcohol-based dehydration. This usually involves using something like ethanol on high-quality A-grade flowers to remove the water and fats. It's effective, but it needs real precision. If it's not done just right, the flowers can end up quite brittle.
Okay, so if I'm a buyer hearing alcohol-based, Should I automatically worry about brittleness? Or can good technique overcome that?
That's a really important question. While yes, alcohol dehydration can result in brittleness if the process isn't controlled perfectly, the best suppliers manage it very well. They can achieve good flexibility. Then you have glycerin preservation. Here, the natural moisture inside the plant cells is carefully replaced with glycerin. This method is really good for maintaining that soft, pliable feel, that flexibility, and it generally contributes to a longer lifespan. And then there's freeze drying, technically called lyophilization. It's a pretty sophisticated vacuum process. It removes water by turning it directly into vapor, sublimation, while keeping the flower's cell structure largely intact. It tends to be more expensive, but it's fantastic for preserving the flower's natural shape and form. And often these do offer the longest lasting results.
Right, so different methods for different needs, potentially. But beyond just preserving the structure, you mentioned dyes earlier. The coloring process must be just as critical, right? What should you be looking for there? And where might suppliers try to cut corners?
What's such a key point.
Yeah.
You can have a perfectly preserved flower, structurally speaking, but if the dye fades quickly, the whole effect is lost. For you as a buyer, it's not just about liking the color initially, it's about the quality of the pigments used. Top-tier preserved flowers use food-grade or at least safe, stable, industrial-grade pigments. These are chosen for their longevity. But yeah, lower-grade products might use cheaper pigments that are much more prone to fading, especially under UV light. It's a kind of hidden vulnerability you need to be aware of.
Okay, so for you, buying these for your business, it's vital to know where that line is, the line between acceptable quality and something that's just unacceptable. This isn't just about personal taste. There have to be some clear indicators, right? What should you be specifically looking for?
Definitely. Let's break down those signs of unacceptable quality. First, color stability. Like we said, noticeable fading within that 6-month window. That's unacceptable. What you should expect, the acceptable standard, is minimal fading for at least 12 to 18 months, maybe even longer for those premium products.
Okay.
Then, petal structure. If the petals become obviously brittle, if they start curling up at the edges or flaking off within 6 months, that's unacceptable. They should stay relatively soft, flexible, and intact for much longer. Also, pay attention to odor. An unacceptable product might have a weird smell, musty, maybe chemical, sometimes even slightly burnt. An acceptable one should be pretty much neutral, or maybe have a faint, pleasant scent if one was added. And finally, something really important for bulk orders. Consistency across SKUs. It's unacceptable if you open different boxes and find significant variations in color or even shape. You need reliable, stable quality batch after batch for your brand image.
So knowing these benchmarks is great, but how can you, as the buyer, actually verify suppliers' claims before committing to a large order? What's a practical step?
Right, you need proof, not just promises. A really good, actionable tip for you is to ask for aging test reports. Reputable suppliers often conduct these. Or at the very least, ask for a series of dated photos of samples over time. Maybe photos taken at, say, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months post-production. This gives you visual evidence to help validate their quality claims rather than just relying on their sales pitch.
That makes sense. And this brings up another crucial point, doesn't it? Longevity isn't just about the manufacturing. Once those flowers leave the controlled environment of the factory, how they're stored and displayed in your warehouse or by your retail partners, that can totally make or break their lifespan. You could source perfectly, but things could still go wrong later.
Absolutely. Connecting this back to your operations, maintaining the right conditions for your inventory and any retail displays is so important. Ideally, you're looking at temperatures between, say, 15 to 25 degrees Celsius. That's about 60 to 77 Fahrenheit. And humidity, ideally between 40% and 60%. And critically, keep them out of direct sunlight. No sunny windowsills. And also away from moisture or steam, so not near kitchens or bathrooms in a display setting. Those seemingly small environmental factors add up.
Okay, 15, 25 degrees C, 40, 60% humidity. That sounds quite specific. Is that always realistic for, say, every distributor's warehouse or maybe a busy retail shop? Are there ways to kind of mitigate less than perfect conditions, especially on the shop floor?
Yeah, that's a very practical challenge. While those ideal conditions are the target, you have to work with reality. For retail displays, some good practices can really help. Using closed display cases or glass domes is great. It creates a sort of microenvironment that buffers against fluctuations. And definitely position displays away from HVAC vents. Those blasts of hot or cold, dry or moist air are bad news. And again, away from windows. And something really simple but often overlooked. Always include clear, simple care instructions for the end customer, either on the packaging or as a little cart.
Right. And for those end customers, what are the absolute golden rules, the key things they need to know to keep the flowers looking good?
It's actually quite simple for the end user, but these are critical. Rule number 1, never water preserved flowers. That's the fastest way to ruin them. Rule 2, dust them very gently. Maybe use a soft makeup brush or a hairdryer on a cool, low setting every few months. And rule 3, try to advise them to avoid touching the petals directly whenever possible. Minimize handling.
And the payoff for you, the B2B buyer, in making sure this information gets passed down. Well, it seems clear. If you educate your distributors, your retailers, and ultimately the end customer on these simple points, you're going to manage expectations better. You'll likely see fewer complaints, fewer returns, and that builds loyalty and repeat business. It's really proactive quality management extending beyond the factory.
Exactly right. You, as the buyer, actually hold a lot of power in this process.
Yeah.
And being prepared before you place that big order is key. Having a kind of checklist, a set of really specific questions to ask potential suppliers, that can be a real game changer.
Okay, let's arm you with that checklist then. If you're talking to a supplier, what are the absolute essential questions you need to be asking?
All right, first, ask for specifics on the preservation method they use. Is it alcohol-based? Is it glycerin? Is it freeze-dried? Understand what you're actually buying. Second, press them on the expected shelf life, but under standard defined conditions. Get them to commit to a time frame. Third, specifically ask if the pigments they use are UV stable. This directly addresses that fading risk we talked so much about. Fourth, check if they provide care instructions with the product itself integrated into the packaging or as separate inserts. It shows they care about the end result. And finally, and this is really important, clearly understand their return or replacement policy. Specifically, what happens if there is early fading or unexpected deterioration? Knowing their policy up front tells you a lot about their confidence in their product and their commitment to you.
And you'd expect a truly reputable, confident supplier to have no problem answering these questions clearly, right?
Precisely. You'll generally find that the well-prepared, quality suppliers will have straightforward, confident answers. They'll likely be ready to back up their claims too, maybe with that documentation we mentioned, aging reports, third-party test results, things like that. If a supplier seems hesitant, evasive, or just can't give you specifics on these points, well, that itself could be a bit of a red flag.
So wrapping this up, what's the big takeaway for you? Preserved flowers, they definitely offer this wonderful, long-lasting alternative to fresh ones. That part is true. But as we've clearly seen today, not all preserved flowers are created equal. It's a much more nuanced market than it might first appear, and those details really, really matter.
Absolutely. And if we bring this back to the big picture for you, as a B2B buyer, it comes down to this. Understanding the science, even just the basics we covered, is crucial. Asking the right targeted questions to your suppliers is essential. And then thinking about and managing that whole supply chain from the factory floor right through to the retail environment, that whole process is key. That's how you ensure the product you sell actually lives up to its promise. And that's how you build that solid, lasting trust with your own customers.
And this really highlights the value of working with experienced partners. Companies like, for example, Sweetie Group, who've been doing this for 16 years. They focus on those advanced manufacturing techniques, the rigorous QC, the customizable packaging that includes care instructions. They're essentially set up to help B2B clients like you deliver on that promise of beauty that genuinely lasts. It connects directly back to everything we've discussed.
So maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. In an industry often defined by beauty that fades quickly, how can you use this deeper knowledge, this strategic approach to sourcing, to turn that temporary allure into real, enduring value and build unbreakable trust for your specific brand?